I started writing this in September of 2009, right after actually the most recent time that I got ambushed in Afghanistan, which was in eastern Nangarhar province, a place called Dara-i-Noor district, and it was one of these classic Afghanistan ambush scenarios. And they were essentially sending us a message about how they felt about our aid prioritization, which seems like a crazy overreaction, right? But if you spend any time in Afghanistan, you'll know that happens all the time. And it turns out that the assistance we give to Afghanistan, which is about 14 times the size of the annual Afghan government budget, is actually responsible for a very substantial amount of the violence that we see on the ground. If you look at the problem set, the military really doesn't figure in your answer, right? There's really no military solution to the problem of rapid, unplanned urbanization across 2/3 of the planet, which is going to soak in, 3 billion new people in the next generation, which is the same number of people that it took all of human history to generate across the entire planet right up until 1960. You could put a Marine regiment or an Army division or an Air Force Expeditionary Air Wing into one of those cities and it would just disappear. No one would probably even notice it was there. We're talking about, cities like Lagos that will have 25 million people by 2040, the entire west coast of India being one single conurbation by 2040, giant cities that you just can't engage with in a traditional military sense. By the way, there is a detailed appendix in the book where I get right into the tactics of how you would do that, but I think there's really no solution that involves the military going in. So a problem focus doesn't result in a military solution. That's like looking at a big city and saying the solution here is fire prevention. That doesn't help you if you're in the fire department, right? If you're in the fire department, your job is not to worry about fire prevention. Your job is to fight the goddamn fires when they break out, right? So you have to think, okay, what do I do when fire prevention fails? So the paradox is if you're in the military, although there's not a significant likelihood of a military solution to a lot of these things, there's a dead certainty that our political leaders will continue to send us into these environments because that's what they've been doing for the last 200 years in a way that's completely unaffected by policymakers' preferences, as I mentioned up front. So if you're in the military, you better understand how to operate in a very crowded, urbanized, coastal environment against a non-state actor who has access to democratized technology and connectivity that makes that adversary dramatically more lethal than anything we've really ever encountered before. So that's the environment that the military needs to be thinking about, and it has some really significant implications for the way we structure and the kinds of things we buy and the way we operate. And that's one whole side of the discussion. But the other side of the discussion is, what are we doing about the problem? Because the solution isn't necessarily military. And I think that it's much more a matter of resiliency and community-based co-design rather than governments coming in, patting people on the head, sort of telling them to sit down and shut up while we give them the solution. And I can talk in much more detail about some of the things that we've done as in my little company with World Bank and NGOs and so on in Africa and Latin America, trying to sort of test some ways that we might operate.